Hello, everyone, and welcome to the art exhibition and Meet the Artist for Collette Mann. I'm your host, Sandy Hopkins, a librarian for the Programming and Community Outreach for the Virginia Beach Public Library. Robert Kennedy is here, and he's hosting as the Volunteer Art Gallery Coordinator for the Myra E. Oberndorf Central Library.
Thanks, Sandy, and welcome to all. We're very happy that you joined us. We are pleased today to welcome Collette Mann. Collette is a mixed media artist who creates mosaics using glass, polymer clay, repurposed jewelry, broken dishes, abandoned windows, beach glass, and about anything that she finds. When Collette isn't making art, she works as a public health nurse and enjoys collaborating with her husband on her projects and spending time with her two dogs and traveling to visit their adult children. Other interests include herbs, the language of flowers, alternative medicine, and yoga. Collette's passions are humanitarian outreach programs, volunteering, and teaching for various nonprofit organizations. Welcome, Collette. We're very glad you've joined us.
Thank you, Rob and Sandy, for allowing me today to introduce myself and to host me in December. I do appreciate that because I know a lot of work goes into that. And thank you for the wonderful introduction, Rob. My medium of choice is stained glass mixed media mosaic. And I particularly enjoy incorporating sentimental objects into my mosaics and typically drawn to what I refer to as magpie items, which most women know what that is. That's kind of shiny objects that the magpie birds are notorious for being attracted to. So I try and put a little bit of magic into my mosaics. A lot of people ask me how I ended up getting started with mosaics. I think I was just inspired by the Byzantine mosaics in general. And when I used to look at the art books, I was really drawn to this style of mosaic. And so at that time, this was back in the early 2000s, we didn't have the Instagram or all of these different resources that are available for people that want to learn different things. So it's kind of the old-fashioned way, and I ended up just looking in the phone book and found a local artist and probably worked with her for maybe about a week. At the time, I had smaller children, so I didn't have a lot of time to spend at her studio. So I ended up just basically teaching myself for the most part, and used to nip glass in a shoebox so that the kids didn't get into my glass. And that's kind of how I started. And then after that, I used to look things up on YouTube, or I would email different artists at the time. You know, it used to be that people just had a web page and you had access by just emailing that particular artist. And the few artists that I did reach out to ask them what their methods were, what kind of grout that they used, they were all very, very helpful. I think in general, creative types usually like to share with each other. And I was also able to, over the years, I've taken a few workshops as well. And these are my modern inspirations. This is what initially inspired me. Lori Micah is a great mosaic artist, but she's a little bit different in the fact that she uses polymer clay. She does a lot of polymer clay collage and painting. And I was really inspired by her work, and Cappy Thompson, all the ones listed here. Probably my first, well, it was my first public viewing was actually at a brewery. There was a friend of mine, a doctor that I worked with, and his son was working at the brewery, and he said, "Oh, you know, this guy that owns Coelacanth is actually helping local artists," and he said that I could show some of my work there. It hadn't occurred to me before to do that, but there. It was kind of nice because he asked ahead of time, so there wasn't any risk of rejection on my part. It was already, they already approved it. So I thought, okay, well, that's kind of neat. So we did that. And then that kind of spawned all of these different art nails. It was kind of Everyone is an Artist campaign on my part. We probably broke even as far as the supplies. You know, was enough to probably pay for beer and for food, and it was a lot of fun. I ended up doing it at O'Connor's, and then the Big Ugly, and I think there were at least 4 or 5 breweries that we did that. And like I said, there were kids. That was pre-COVID, and the breweries seemed to be popping up all over the place. And I thought, well, that's kind of a great way for people to come in, and we'd charge them like $10, and they'd sit down, and I brought all the rolling pins and paint, and people would paint with their kids, and they might have a beer, and it was just nice family fun for everybody. We had a good time doing that. So that's kind of how I had my start publicly anyway. And then another friend of mine, it always seemed like a friend was encouraging me, because for the most part, my artwork has been kind of private. I'm a nurse by trade, but I'd say I was probably an artist before I was ever a nurse. So again, it was always another friend that was saying, why don't you try this? So another friend of mine, she said, well, why don't you try the Suffolk Art League? And so I did. And I ended up winning a couple of things here and there. And the Suffolk Art League is a great place to start. They just have beautiful receptions in there. It's a nice group of people. And these are just a few items, or a few pictures, I should say, of work in progress. You can kind of see my process here. Usually I'll start out with the sketch. A lot of the times I'll start drawing something. I think it's going to turn out one way. I end up erasing and then drawing something else, and it just kind of evolves. Now, I try to avoid gluing the glass down unless I really don't like it. Once it's glued down, it's glued down. Unless I really don't like it, because it kind of is a pain to take a screwdriver and a hammer and get and get the glass up. But this is, like I said, a little window into my process here. This is one of my recent pieces called Babushka Rose. I was really intrigued by an article that I read. It had to do with the pouring of the sand. I'm not going to try and pronounce that Polish word, but I was inspired. My mother is Polish. I have some Polish roots. I don't speak Polish. My mom speaks a little bit. But anyway, I read this article, and it had photographs of pouring of the sand, and this was a tradition that they did around feast times, and it was for prosperity and good luck and all of these different things that I found very interesting. And so I created a mosaic, and it was actually published in the Stained Glass News issue 156 in 2023. So that's pretty recent. That's kind of nice. And these are just other pictures here. They're referred to as sand carpets. I mean, you can see in the bottom portion, there's other symbols. And these symbols are also incorporated into some of the traditional Polish embroidery that you see. And that's just a full version of Babushka Rose. And you'll see this in my work again and again. A lot of them, they look like little Matryoshka dolls. They'll have babushkas on their head, which I don't know why, just have a fondness for them. So this particular piece was inspired by the Words That Matter at the Virginia Beach Art Center. And the words that matter to me were different but the same. So I was trying to convey that there's a sense of sameness, more sameness than there is difference in this. These are more pictures of kind of the whole process of before grout, you're taping off, because I use different colors of grout in the mosaic. So for the flesh tone, I'm taping everything off and then using a flesh tone colored grout. And doing the same thing here. And then you'll see in the right bottom corner, I'm doing the opposite, where I'm taping off the face now, so that the lighter colored grout doesn't get covered by the darker colored grout. So it's a little time consuming mosaic, but I do love it. And I like the way it looks. This particular frame was really interesting. I asked my husband before, this kind of came when I thought of the idea, different but the same. I thought, well, I had envisioned in my mind what I wanted. So I asked my husband, do you think you'd be able to create a frame that can actually turn? And he said that, well, he said, I think I can. And so that's what we did. So this particular frame actually is an interactive piece where you can turn it either way. And I thought it was important for the viewer to be able to look at it from both ends and not prefer a certain person to the other. The figures are the same. Different, you know, we celebrate differences and our sameness. I've also have some examples here of a mixture of my polymer clay with the stained glass. So you can see the first few slides were just stained glass. And this is a little bit different. You have a little bit more textures. This is me painting using gold leaf, mixed media. There's commercial tiles in there. There's pieces of jewelry, all kinds of different things. This really does appeal to me. I love the magic of glass and the reflective qualities, but I also love the polymer clay where I can actually paint. And it does go a little bit faster with the polymer clay rather than the glass, but I love them both. This one here in particular, this is just a piece of polymer clay that I carved out and painted. And then around here are pieces of glass. I think there's some Italian tile in there. And this is a finial piece that my husband created for me. And these are just more work in progress. You can see it's me sketching it out. And then it just slowly comes together. I want to show you the differences, the before and the grout. It's kind of a love-hate relationship that I have with grout. Sometimes I like the pieces better before they're grouted, and then afterwards it takes me a while to get used to what my piece looks after it's grouted, because it takes so long to finish a mosaic that for a very long time you're used to just seeing it ungrouted. But I think I'm a bit of a purist in that way, that I like the idea of it looking more cohesive with the grout. But that doesn't mean that it's right or it's wrong. It's just my preference. And these are more mixed media. When I say mixed media, it's I'm referring to the polymer clay, the Italian tiles, and then of course the woodwork that my husband created for me. So this series was kind of inspired by, I think he was working on Christmas ornaments, or he started using these finials, and I was just inspired by them. And I thought, I wonder if he could make frames with finials. And so I drew out a picture, and he inevitably, for the most part, I can't think of a time that he's ever said, no, we can't do that. So, and that's kind of what inspired this, spawned the Faith series. And there's a larger one here, a smaller one. And this is his little cameo shot of him working in the wood shop. And these are just more work in progress. And that's her finished. And then this was a commission. So this was an interesting piece. It was a doctor that I worked with in the general surgery clinic, had a family church that he was very fond of. And he said, would I be interested in a commission? And I said, sure. And he was nice enough to give me creative leeway. So in the beginning, or in the center here, is his church. And I want to say it's in Pennsylvania, somewhere in the north. I think it's Pennsylvania. And I typically, if I'm doing a commission, I do take pictures in between to make sure that this is what they like, if there are any particular colors that they dislike. And he was really good about letting me do what I wanted to do. You know, it's nice when you have the freedom and that they also like the piece in the end. So this is his church. And then this here, you can tell, is a little bit more stylized. And that's me kind of just creating a town around his church. And there it is. Okay, so I was right. It's Pennsylvania. I think that's what I said. Yes, it's a Ukrainian Catholic church. And he was happy. So I'm always happy when they're happy. And that's me delivering, framed up and ready to go. And he has this in his, I think it's in his kitchen area. He's really interesting. He actually paints Ukrainian eggs. That's just my little sidebar conversation there. This was another commission that was kind of interesting because it was kind of abstract. She had an idea of what she wanted, something that represented herself. She's very spiritual. she had a particular scripture, which escapes me now, but refers to still water. So it was important that she had the still waters. She had a church. And then there's windows, if you look closely, somewhere in here, of a guitar, because that is her passion. She likes to play music and she's spiritual. And so all these little things that are specific to Kathy. And she was happy with it. But that was a challenge for me because it was kind of an abstract idea. She said, well, these are the things that I want in the mosaic. And I showed her a couple of pictures here and there, and we went from there, and that was it. And this is just another commission. And this was one. This one ended up, I believe, on somebody's boat. I was really inspired by, this was another physician that I worked with. And then this is before and after. Well, actually the reverse, sorry. So before grout and after grout, you can see how it kind of changes it. And I do love that I was able to kind of capture the movement of water in this one. And this was another commission. There's just more commissions here. This is the Land of Evian mixed media mosaic. So again, polymer clay creeping in through here. The Land of Evian is actually maybe spelled backwards. I usually don't tell people these little, I don't want to say secrets, but you know, every artist has their own little, I don't want to say secret language, but that's what it was. So sometimes they're autobiographical, where it was kind of a time in my life where it was kind of, I was in a maybe situation. So just refer to it as the Land of Evian, because the Land of Evian sounds better than the Land of Maybe, doesn't it? And here's another example of polymer clay, mosaic Michael. And these are finials again that my husband did. Recycling. So this is a piece, it wasn't a commission, it was a piece that I created because I had a broken dish. It was actually a casserole dish. It had a crack right down the middle of it. And I absolutely love Polish pottery. And I thought, well, I don't want to waste that. So let me see if I can create something. Well, let me see if I can go back to that. Sorry. And yeah, so that's what I did. Recycled and used that. And this one I believe is called Peaceful Serenity. So anyway, I uploaded it onto Facebook, and probably within, I don't know, a couple hours of me posting it, one of my friends instant messaged me privately and said, is that for sale? So it's kind of funny. It's like you get attached to your pieces, you're ready to let them go, but this one, you know, I probably let her go a little sooner than I wanted to, but my friend Robin was really in love with her, so she purchased her. And then these are just other mediums. Recently, I think it's like 2 years ago, I took a class with Beth Netz at Portsmouth, which I don't think that studio is still around. I think they moved it or something. But anyway, this was kind of me doing mosaic on fused glass or tacking glass. It wasn't a full fuse, and these are full fused pieces. And this is just more process. So sketching out the scene, laying down the glass gluing, grouting, cleaning, sealing, frame construction. So a lot goes into these pieces. And then it's just ready for a display. So I don't know if, you know, if you haven't done mosaic, to appreciate it really is time consuming. I love it. It's almost meditative. But it is time consuming. I love it though. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. And these are most recent pieces. Cat I Am, and I'm Just a Cat. So again, it's one of those things where I posted this on my Facebook page. I think it was, yeah, it was my Facebook page. And somebody private messaged me and said, is that for sale? I said that it was. She said she would think about it, and she purchased it. And then as soon as she received this one, she sent me another message and said, well, I have 2 cats. Is it possible that you could maybe do another cat? Because I can't have one cat and not the other. So she ended up with both of these cats. And these are tools of the trade. Weld bond. I prefer prism sanded glass, or I'm sorry, prism sanded grout. I like it because you don't have to seal it with this particular grout. And this is the weld bond that I use. These are nippers. Of course, you'd use a bucket, um, to mix your rags and things like that. And this is substrate that you can use. Great thing about mosaic is you can mosaic on anything. I've recently mosaiced on my stairs in the front of our house. But you can pretty much mosaic. That's when you know you've been bitten by the mosaic bug, is when you look at objects and you think, I can mosaic on top of that. And classes upon request. So these were, classes I did at the brewery, kid classes. These are classes at the health department. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing everybody in December. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much, Collette. That was really interesting, and I've been excited about your show since we first did the judging, and I know it's people are just going to love it. Your pieces are really intricate and complex, and particularly the large ones were really awesome. So I can't wait to see them in person. Now, you mentioned that you're mainly self-taught. I was wondering if you had an interest in art since your youth, or is this a later development?
Actually, from the time I was younger, I definitely have created in some capacity, whether it's, in high school, I was an art major, if you can be an art major in high school. But then, and all the artists are probably not going to like me saying this, the ones that have art degrees, is I found that I found that it really is difficult to try and make a living out of making art. But I've always been an artist. I was an artist before I was a nurse, and always created in some capacity, whether it was, making the kids' costumes, whether it was pottery, fabric collage, whatever it is. But mosaic has really been my passion for probably since probably early 2000s.
Okay, well, great. Yes, we find that, most of the artists that we interview really, they just love art, create art all their life. And you mentioned the designs evolving as you're working on it. So does that include, you do drawings before? Does that also include the material, the color? Um,
Yeah, sometimes the colors will inspire me. It's just the color of glass, but for the most part, it's an idea. It could be, it could be a song. Like for this particular piece, there was a song that inspired me. Sometimes it's even going to the museum and being inspired by other artists. And then, sometimes I'll draw something and I think it's going to turn out one way, and then it turns out a completely different way. And sometimes I'll take, especially if it's a commission piece, I'll take work in progress shots as it's going, because I don't even realize sometimes, because once you erase it and you put the glass down, you don't remember what your plan was previously, because it just kind of slowly evolved. So that's kind of how I came to the realization, wow, your stuff really does kind of change in the process, when I was looking at some of the photographs that I took of the mosaic pieces that I was working on with the work in progress shots.
Okay. And you mentioned how time consuming it is, and I'm sure it really is. Uh, does that also vary from piece to piece? I'm sure it does for smaller to larger, but even within the own type, does it vary a lot? And
It
do you work on more, I'm sorry, do you work on more than one piece at a time, like some oil painters might do?
So normally I do not, but because I'm preparing for this show in December, this is
Okay.
the first time that I've worked on multiple pieces,
I
because
see.
because
Okay.
I'm working on smaller pieces. But to answer your question about the time, and you're right, the complexity has a lot to do with it. So people always say, well, how long does it take you to make that piece? It depends on three different things: the size, of course,
Sure.
the complexity of the design, and how inspired I am at the time. Because if I'm really inspired,
Right.
my husband says, oh, I can tell you're in the zone, because I am in the zone. And then it's like I'll get up and, eat, and then for the most part, I'm up in my room nonstop until it's probably dinner time. So if I'm really in the zone, then it does go more quickly. But
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. And really, the greatness of art isn't contingent on time anyway. But again, it's obvious this is very time consuming. It's wonderful that you get commissions, so they would just, I assume, either call you or email you if they want a commission,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you also mentioned teaching. Do you have any teaching coming up?
So Charles H. Taylor in February. I want to say it's February 6th, but don't count me on that. I mean, she'll advertise it, but in February we'll be teaching
Sure.
intro to mosaic. And they're small pieces. They're little 4x4, so that way they can get kind of the logistics of using nippers and creating a mosaic.
Well, good. And is that a one day class or?
It is a one-day class.
Uh-huh.
And that's why it's such a small, I don't know what you should call it, because they're little 4x4s. But again, mosaic takes time for
Sure.
people to learn how to cut the glass and all of that. So I figured little ones would be, and I've also found some of the little workshops I've done just with my friends here,
Right.
they get overwhelmed. So if I have a larger piece, inevitably a lot of them don't finish it. They don't
Right.
finish the piece. So I thought, well, if we go smaller, maybe people will actually finish finish their mosaics.
Well, and it's great that you teach children as well as adults. And your art really should be an inspiration to everyone. Do you have any advice, in fact, for people who want to get involved in making mosaic art?
I think there are so many more resources out there than what I had. We have Instagram. We did have YouTube with me for in the beginning too, but I think there's such a wide range that if it's something you really want to do, you can find the time. And I know mosaic, because of it being glass, if you have to, you can start out like I did, where you're nipping your glass in a shoebox.
Right.
Right now I have my own room, but initially when I first started, I didn't have room. So, there's lots of resources, and there are a lot of artists, myself included, that the knowledge that I have is free. If somebody emails me and has questions, I'm more than happy to answer those questions.
Great. That's very generous. That's good. And is there anything that you would like to do uh, that you haven't done with your mosaic art or really just art in general? Any goals or?
My goal, I would like to do more outdoor installations. I've recently did my stairs, but I would like to learn how to do sculpture. So I'm looking into trying to find a workshop that I can do some outdoor mosaic sculptures.
Great. That's great. Uh, well, again, Colette, we thank you so much for joining us. And we hope all of you will stop by this December at Myra E. Orbendorf Central Library. And Colette's reception is December 6th, 2023 from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. So thanks very much. And we hope to see you there.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it.
Sure.